Hello, hello, American Crochet Association. Selena Baca here, founder, host, lead educator with the ACA. And today I am making this video because we are starting a crochet along challenge for our members. And this is the very first part of that crochet along. So if you are watching this video live, come on over, say hey, say hello, tell us where you're viewing from. And if you're watching on the replay, that's totally cool. That's the reason we record these videos. So just come on over, pretend like you're watching live, have fun, let us know where you're viewing from. And please feel free to make these videos a conversation. So ask questions, offer feedback, anything that I'm talking about here today, just, pretend like I'm talking just to you. And I promise it'll be a great conversation. So ACA members, this month, the month of March, you guys voted for our crochet along pattern, and overwhelmingly so, you guys chose, because it's a granny square theme this month, you guys chose the granny square table runner. So in this part today, part one of this, I am going to be going over some things to do before we actually get started on this project. Because at the American Crochet Association, we want to make sure that you're building your knowledge and then you're applying that knowledge to build your skill. So I have an entire page of notes to give you guys because I want to assure that we're utilizing all of the teachings, everything that you learned within the learning path that you have access to if you're part of our crochet membership, that you're going back and you're looking at specific lessons and applying some very key aspects of those lessons to make this table runner. Because you guys may be looking at this table runner, you more experienced crocheters, and you guys may be saying, I can make a granny square. That doesn't look very difficult. And it's not supposed to be super difficult or anything like that. So really, whether you're a beginner, whether you're new to crochet and you're just looking to, really kind of implement some of these teachings, or maybe again, you're like me and you're like, I've been crocheting for 35 years. I can make that with my eyes closed. Really, these are great things to practice and apply. And I've got a ton of learning objectives. So the things that I want to be going over today are in reference to prepping to make this design. So we're going to be talking about yarn, substituting yarn. I'll tell you what yarn I use, but how you can substitute. We'll talk about the 6S method, which is something that we have in the learning path. I'll go over that in just a minute. We're going to be talking about fibers, weight, and color. I'm going to be talking about swatching, and I've got a little bit of homework for you guys. So that's actually the first thing we're going to do before we make this table runner. Things to swatch for. Then we're going to be talking about the seams and joins that we're utilizing in this project. And finally, we're going to be talking about finishing. To see you. And also, it looks like Jace is here. Jace says, morning, secretly watching at work. Okay. Well, I'm glad that you're here. All right, guys, I'm going to move on with the lesson. I am going to go in parts. And this video, after you watch, click on the link in the video description, and it will take you to this crochet along section in your crochet membership. So it'll take you right there. If you're not yet a member of the American Crochet Association crochet membership, click on that link, because if you're not a member, it'll give you an opportunity to join. Okay. And that's for anybody watching on the replay that, maybe isn't part of the American Crochet Association yet. All right. First and foremost, let's talk about yarn, because yarn is the funnest part of any crochet project, maybe. But there's a lot of questions in yarn, right? And sometimes we aren't asking enough questions whenever we're creating projects. So that's what we're going to pause and do first for this table runner project, okay? Now, the yarn that I used is a worsted weight for 100% cotton yarn. What brand did I use? I used so many different yarns that I had to have my notes up here. I'm pretty sure, did I use Bernat Handicrafter? I think I used Bernat Handicrafter. I'm pretty sure. However, there's tons of worsted weight for yarns that you can use and substitute for this. So as I'm looking at the pattern listing, ACA members, go download this pattern for free. Again, just click on the link in the video description here. You can download it for free this month. In that pattern listing, I do have some suggested yarn substitutes. Again, I believe I used Handy Crafter for this. But the wonderful thing about this table runner is that it really isn't size specific, okay? And I'm saying that, because it's not, a hat. It doesn't have to be exactly a 16-inch circumference. It's not a sweater. It doesn't have to be exactly a size medium, not a small or a large. So we have a lot of creative liberty in terms of yarn weight and overall size for this. And as a matter of fact, that's part of the beauty of this particular pattern, is that it's also going to be an exercise in size and gauge, okay? So again, this was worsted weight for 100% cotton yarn. And really, whenever you're thinking about making anything in crochet, right? When you're thinking about yarn, we talk about at the American Crochet Association, the 6S method. That's kind of, that's something that you ask yourself, what yarn do I want to use for this project? First and foremost, you have to think about what the project is. Where am I going to be putting this? What am I going to be doing with this? For example, this particular table runner, I made this to match my dining room table. Okay, so this is going to be a centerpiece on my dining room table. It's probably going to be up there, for a daily use thing, although I have lots of table runners, so I kind of change them out. But my point to that is that because it's going to be on my dining room table, food is going to get spilled on this. Drinks, food, splashes, table stuff, right? It's going to get messy. So that's the reason I chose cotton, because cotton wears well and it also washes well. It's really easy care. So whether I want to spot clean this, or if I want to put this, if I want to soak it and kind of scrub it, if I want to put it in the washing machine and then lay it flat to dry, I have a lot of options in terms of how to care for this. However, if you want to substitute, think about where you're going to be putting this. Is it going to be decorative and near food, decorative, not near food? Where are you going to be putting this? What are you going to be doing with it? That will help you decide. The 6S method does ask you to think about things concerning your yarn, the characteristics, like, do you need the yarn to be soft, sturdy, squishy, stretchy, scratchy, or stiff? The 6S method. And for me, I wanted this to be, it doesn't matter if it's soft or not. I want this to be sturdy. It doesn't need to be squishy. I don't want it to be stretchy. So I don't want this to kind of stretch out whenever I, put it through care instructions or anything like that. I don't want water to really kind of stretch it out or anything, especially if a drink spills on this. Scratchy, it doesn't matter. My dining room table is not going to care whether or not this yarn is scratchy, so that's fine. Stiff, yes, I want the yarn to be stiff. So if you're substituting yarn, if you're going to be doing the same thing that I am, I would recommend sturdy and stiff. Doesn't matter if it's scratchy or not, but it doesn't need to be soft. So definitely consider those things. Next is fiber. And again, the fiber question has everything to do with what you're going to be doing with this project. Again, it's a table runner or it's a decorative piece. So you probably are not going to be, busting out your really expensive hanks of yarn that are, Angora or merino or something like that. You can if you want to, if you have a yarn that's beautiful and it's going to be for decorative purposes and you're like, I love this beautiful yarn and I just want to do something with that. If you want to this to be a display piece, you can use your display yarn. That's absolutely fine. However, again, think about where it's going and, what it needs to do. So again, that's why I chose just economy grade cotton, absolutely fine. Another thing to think about when choosing yarn is the weight of the yarn. Now, this is where the exercise in size and gauge kind of comes into play. And I think this is where you can kind of take some creative liberties, right? So I used weight 4 yarn, but we know that there's lots of different weights of yarn, right? So you can get as creative as you'd like with this. If you want to use thread, that would be really cool. If you want to use a super huge, big, bulky weight 6 yarn, just because you think that would be a really cool decor piece on your coffee table, or maybe you, instead of being a table runner, maybe you want to make one and hang it on your wall or something like that. You can take those creative liberties. So again, size is not crucial for this, especially if you have something specific in mind, right? Maybe you want to make this in thread and it's going to be a bookmark. Maybe, again, you want to make this big and giant and bulky, and maybe it's like a blanket that goes on the edge of your bed or something. You really can get creative with this table runner, okay? So as you're thinking about weight, just remember, and this kind of goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. The smaller weight of yarn is going to make a smaller project. Obviously, thread could make a bookmark. I would love to see that if someone makes a bookmark out of this. Larger weights of yarn are going to make a larger project. So as you're considering yarn for this, I'm going to give you guys some homework in just a minute. But as you're choosing yarn, make a square to the specifications of the pattern. Measure that, because that measurement is going to determine, or going to be a factor into determining how large your finished project is based on that one square for whatever gauge you're using. Now, the last thing to think about whenever you're thinking about yarn is the color of the yarn. Now, I obviously just used two colors, two solid colors, so this kind of off-white and gray, but you can get really creative with color. This could all be one color if you want. However, I would encourage you to really try different yarn colors, okay? You could make each one of these rounds a different color. You can follow my exact color template if you want. You can see that each square ends with that contrasting color, and then the border uses the beginning color, the color A. So that was it, so color for this can also be a design feature for this project. So you really can get as creative as you like. However, just know that sometimes color can hinder your overall fabric. So we are creating a look with this classic granny square motif and this classic granny square stitch. So we're doing all of that hard work because we want to see that in action. We want to see these individual squares, and we want to see the border. Now, it was my intention when I designed this that that's exactly what it looks like. You see all of these individual squares joined together in a long row, but then you also see this border. So it was my intention that the colors enhance that specific look. So as you're choosing colors, think about that. If you choose a variegated yarn, for example, that is really, really busy, there's going to be so much color involved that you may be missing out on those design specifics. So when I give you your homework, you're going to try out your yarn and see if you like it or not before you commit to it for an entire project. So we'll talk about that too. Okay, so pertaining to yarn, I went through those things. If you're going to be substitute, if you want to make this exact same table runner and you want it to be a table runner, you want to use the same yarn, the same colors, feel free. However, if you want to be substituting, hopefully those notes that I gave you on the 6S method, fiber, weight, and color will be helpful so that you can choose a yarn that you're really happy with for this project. All right, I'm going to pause for just a moment because I see a few more of you guys are here and I've got a few more comments. So I just wanted to say hello to June Marshall. Thank you for leaving a comment here and being here. And there's also a person who likes to draw stuff that says hello. So hi guys, thank you for being here. And again, as I'm talking either live or on the replay, if you have any questions or comments about anything that I'm talking about here today pertaining to our table runner crochet along, go ahead and post it in the comments and I will answer it as soon as I see it, whether live right now or on the replay. Okay. So the next learning objective that I want to talk about for this pertains to some elements that you can find in your Swatch course in the learning path. Okay, so everything that I talked about previously pertaining to yarn was all part of the yarn course at the learning path. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the Swatch course because there are some elements to that Swatch course that are going to be really helpful for this project, or that I want you to apply so that you can really build your swatching skills. Okay, So this is where the homework comes into play, okay? So before you dive into the pattern, before you just get the pattern and go, I'm just gonna make the whole thing. Again, we're kind of building our skills here, right? In a fun way. So what I would like for you guys to do before you dive into this pattern, or before you dive into completing the project, I should say, is follow the pattern and make 3 squares. So just 3, 1, 2, 3. That's all I want you to do, okay? Now, when you make those 3 squares, there's a few key things that I want you to think about. So the assumption is you've chosen your yarn, you know what yarn you want to use, you know what order the colors are going to be in. Now let's put that into practice, but let's consider a few other things as we're just making 3 squares, okay? So if you're going to be changing colors, or whether or not you determine you're going to changing colors, I think it would be a good idea for you to try a color change. I suggest color changing on the last round as the pattern indicates, okay? And the reason is that there's a few different ways you can incorporate or change color. And so I want you to practice those. That's a good thing to swatch, okay, is your color change method, especially for this specific type of fabric. The reason there's lots of different ways to change color is that one method or one way may work really well with a particular kind of fabric, but not for others. Or, you know, one may work really well with a particular kind of fiber or weight of yarn, but it may not work so well for others. So again, whatever yarn you choose, apply color change in this swatch. Next, you're going to swatch because I want you to practice a few things, okay? So yes, that color change, but I want you to also think about your tension and the uniformity of your stitches. You're making different motifs and putting them together. So typically, even I've been crocheting for 35 years. The first time I make something, even if it's a granny square, my tension may not be as uniform as the second or third one. So just creating these little practice swatches will help make sure that your tension evens out. Tension is muscle memory. So the more you make something, the more even your tension is. You could make 100 of these granny squares. The first 5 aren't going to look like the last 5. And so that's why we want to kind of practice with the swatch. There are joining methods used on this. We are utilizing join as you go, but again, there are 9 different ways you can join things in crochet, either with your crochet hook or with a yarn needle. We're utilizing just one, which is known as the JAYGO method, join as you go. So if you've never practiced that before, if you've never tried it before, or maybe you have, but you haven't tried it with this yarn and this stitch, again, that's what making these 3 squares is going to help you do. It's going to help you practice that join method and get comfortable with it. This swatch is also going to show you whether or not the colors you chose, the yarn you chose, do you like it with this stitch pattern? Trying it out on a small scale swatch first is going to help you to go, yeah, I love it, or, ooh, no, I don't like these colors together, or I don't like the way this motif is hidden by the colors. Seeing it in action is really going to help you before you commit to making an entire project that you don't like. Another few things that are really important are the care instructions. Again, I noted that I made this with cotton because it's going to go on my dining room table. And if food gets on it, I want to make sure that I can care for it. I can wash it. I can clean it without worrying about ruining my fabric or the stitch or anything like that. So whatever your care instructions are pertaining to your label, follow those care instructions for the swatch to make sure that your yarn and your fabric and your colors are going to hold up, right? So definitely do that. This is a fun project to practice blocking too. So you may go, it's a table runner. Why would I block? Why am I going to do it? I'm not going to go through that trouble. It's a fun thing to practice, okay? So maybe you're a little familiar with blocking, maybe you're not. This is a great first project to try blocking if you're not familiar with it, because it's a table runner, it's a small project, and if you test it out here, you might feel more bold in making a sweater or something else that really, a lacy shawl that's really going to enhance with some blocking, right? So this is a great project for you to try a blocking method. And if you just have those 3 squares, those 3 squares are going to be connected. So you can try different means and methods, depending on the yarn that you're using, to try to block the fabric. For example, whenever I blocked this fabric, I always like to block in a very minimalistic, very basic way, because I don't want people to feel intimidated with mats and pins and extra equipment and space and all of that. So whenever I block things like this, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I make sure that I'm choosing yarn that can, and patterns and fabrics that can, you know, really lend itself well to this. But because this is 100% cotton, I literally folded it up into as small as possible. I put it in the sink, filled it up with water, made sure it was saturated, drained it. I wrung it out very gently so that you don't want to wring it, right? I wrung out the excess water. Then I laid this out to where it was just folded in half, put it in between 2 towels, rolled it up to really get the excess moisture out. This sounds complicated, but it's far less complicated than pins and mats and all of that. Then I put it flat. I did not sew in and weave in my ends. Guilty. And then I laid it out flat on a table, but I just kind of lightly on the sides. I wanted these to be very straight, right? I just kind of gently suggested them into this square shape, right? So really that's where it mattered there. And I just kind of gently just kind of suggested it. I say suggested because you don't want to like, you're not creating fabric. You're just gently kind of molding it into the shape that it needs to be. So when I say blocking, try that out with this particular project because, let me look at the front side. Let's look at the front side together because that's really going to help you feel more confident in what it means to block and what happens to fabric. And if you make any mistakes, if you hold it wrong, if it's too wet, if you wring it wrong, like that really can ruin your fabric. So this, you know, the 3 squares will be a helpful way for you to really kind of get comfortable with that. And the last thing that I want you to really kind of consider whenever you're making this swatch, as you can see with my ends, I didn't quite do this with the middle ones. I thought, you know, I'm just going to kind of hide those. Nobody can see those. But really ends are a very important, or finishing your ends is a very important aspect of crochet because so often, you know, it's boring, you know, it's cumbersome. We don't want to deal with ends whenever we're done with our project. When we're done with that last stitch, we want to be done, right? We don't think about finishing. We're just like, you know what? I finished the last stitch. That's it. However, if you do at least one color change, you're going to have at least a few ends per square. Okay. So there's lots of different finishing techniques in crochet. So definitely go back to our finishing lesson in the learning path because there's going to be some different tips and tricks there. Okay. For example, whenever you're finishing, depending on your fabric, depending on the yarn, depending on the fiber, you're either going to be sewing in your ends, weaving in your ends, or you can sew and weave and not do any combination of those, whatever your fabric is going to be more susceptible to, right? Whatever's going to make the most sense. So definitely attempt some of those finishing, those fastening elements in your swatch. And again, that's before the washing and the blocking and all of that, okay? Because that's going to help you to determine, did I use the right, okay, I wove in my ends, but then after I blocked it, those ends just came right out. And that's because this is 100% cotton. So maybe I need to, you know, kind of weave and then not, maybe that will be a better thing for me. So those are all different elements of the learning path that I would love for you guys to go back, read through, and then apply so that we can really kind of implement all of those little lessons from the learning path so that as you're making this granny square table runner, you're practicing lots of different things, okay? Also, some final notes on this. If you're new to crochet, if you're new to pattern reading, if you're new to intermediate level instructions, which is what this is, just because of the kind of repeats there are, it's not hard. It's not impossible. It's not terrible. It's just that, you know, this is one of those things that looks very simple. And for anyone who's ever made a granny square, it's like, I can make a granny square with my eyes closed. However, it looks far more simple than it is to write. So the pattern itself, again, the instructions are a little more intermediate just because of the kind of repeats there. So in saying that, if you're new to pattern reading, if you're new to intermediate level instructions, if you're new to diagrams and crochet charts and all of that, we have lots of resources for you. So again, Click on the link in the video description, ACA members, log in. We have a chart for this. If you don't know how to read charts, you can go back to the pattern reading course in the learning path and brush up on your pattern reading and chart skills for this, because we do have a granny square diagram. We do have a video tutorial on how to create this specific diagram, or how to create this specific granny square. And that's, again, if you're just kind of new to granny squares and you just want to see stitch placement for those instructions, we have that resource for you. And last but not least, we do have a video tutorial that shows actually all 9 seams and joins that you can utilize in crochet or with a yarn needle, specifically the join as you go method. So all of those resources are available to you. So no matter what kind of learner you are or where your crochet skills lie, you should be able to complete this with confidence and all the while build all of those skills and abilities that I just outlined. And so on that note, that concludes part 1 of our crochet along. So what I would like for you guys to do is choose a yarn, choose your colors, and make at least 3 granny squares that join together as per the pattern instructions. So go on ahead and do that now. We're going to give you a couple days to kind of do that. And what I would like for you guys to do is add these projects to Ravelry. We have a video tutorial that shows you how to do that. Again, link in the video description. And the reason we want to utilize Ravelry is that it's a great way. It's actually the only way on the internet that we know of that you can find a pattern and attach your project to it. So not only does it help to build your crochet resume, what kind of things you're making, yarns, dates, sizes, all of that, but it's also a great resource for others to see a pattern and go back and look at all of the projects to get some inspiration and just some further resources to help with the design. So create your Ravelry project, because we do have some prizes for our ACA members who follow along with the crochet along in our timeline. And how you're going to follow along so that you can participate in those prizes is by posting your project. So part 1, get your project loaded, choose your yarn, make 3 squares, and list that. Tell us a little bit about it. You know, in that project, you can tell us what yarns you're using, how you're applying color. You can talk about the care instructions. You can talk about what weight you're using. You can list gauge. You can list your size. I mean, really kind of tell us, you know, all of those different aspects of your swatch, because I think it's going to be really helpful for us as a community. All right. Okay, guys, that is everything for part 1. Part 2 is going to be this week as well. You guys can, American Crochet Association members, you guys can find the entire schedule and details in the link in the video description. Okay, and if you guys have any questions at all, you guys can just send us an email and we'll get right back to you. Okay. Also, within this crochet along challenge, in our membership area, there at the bottom of the page, you can leave comments. So we're trying to make this as open and clear and fun for our members as possible. This is the first time we're hosting a crochet along of this magnitude. So again, questions, comments, feedback, please keep us posted, because we want this to be a fun and enjoyable experience for you guys. Okay. All right. I see there are a few more comments here, so I'm going to go through and read those. Username. Some of the usernames are hard to read. So this user says, hello, I like using the join as you go. I crocheted a kitchen valance using it. Awesome. Yeah, join as you go has become one of my favorite methods when joining crochet pieces. It's a great way to kind of, you know, make different motifs, and as you make each motif, it joins to the last. And there's just, for me, there's some satisfaction in growing a project in its entirety. I've made different motifs and then joined them together when all the motifs were done. And just, there's some great methods for doing that as well, but I just really enjoy join as you go. So that's why I chose that for this. It looks like Jerry Sue Tinker is here, and she says, hello, Jerry, always so good to see you. A person who draws stuff says, I just subscribed. Welcome. Thank you for being here and enjoying. And then I just see a heart eyes emoji. So I love it. It sounds like you're having a good time. All right, guys, that is all I have for you on part 1 of this crochet along. I hope that this is a fun and enjoyable way to not only build your crochet knowledge, but apply that to really build your crochet skill. I think this is a fun project. I'm so glad you guys voted for it. And there are tons of things that we can take from the learning path to apply into this project, as simplistic as it is, to really assure that your crochet knowledge and skills can just advance. Okay. So I can't wait to see your projects. I can't wait to see your swatches for everybody following along with this. And again, questions, comments, feedback, the ACA is always here and open and welcome to hearing from you. All right, everyone, let's get to work. Peace, love, crochet. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.